entered RT Coles in September of 1949. I was in the 8th grade. And back then, all African American children in Kansas City and the surrounding areas had to go to RT Coles to move on with their education, whether it was going to be remaining at RT Coles or going to Lincoln, which were the only two schools in the area at that time. They were the heart and soul of the African American community, even the African American communities that were in the outlying areas. There were schools that were right across the street from little pockets of African American communities, and one that I think of, there was one in Westport. And a lot of the kids lived like in a 3-square-block area, and there was a school right across the street in the neighborhood, but they weren't allowed to attend that school until Brown versus Board of Education.
The school that I attended at the time it came about, I was at Wendell Phillips Elementary School. And at that time, we were living on 24th and Bell Fountain. And I had to walk to school every day to Wendell Phillips. And yet my neighbors, we lived in an integrated neighborhood, and it was predominantly white. And those children went to the neighborhood schools right around the corner. There were some fears of some of the students that they were afraid to intermingle with the other students. We really didn't know what it was going to be like because we were so accustomed to just being around our own neighbors. But we thought it was a good idea. It was a good way to mix and mingle with other people of other nationalities.
I think there was a lot of excitement and welcoming about the funding because the schools had been horribly underfunded. The buildings were crumbling, they were in horrible conditions. But I also believe there was a feeling that there was a loss of local control. There was, a lot of court supervision involved with it.
We had to listen, we didn't spend as much time really with our communities because a lot of the people in the community did not know exactly what we were trying to do. A lot of the communities did not want to they did not want their youngsters leaving, going to other schools, based on a theme. And a lot of the community people, black and white, were they were resisting the change because they didn't want to leave the neighborhood school.
The community was kind of divided on this because some people wanted the desegregation or the integration, and some people did not, because it did not only break down the schools and the communities and the neighborhoods, but also the businesses.
Well, Kansas City was a unique situation. The Jenkins case had a remedy imposed on it that was really unlike any other that had been done before it. Judge Clark decided how the integration efforts would take place. And during that time period, the demographics in the district were very predominantly minority, and there weren't actually enough non-minority students in the district to effectuate the integration. So the judge imposed a tax levy, which hadn't been done before. He also imposed salary increases for teachers, which was another unique thing that had never been done before. So we had a lot of unique efforts. Probably the most newsworthy, I think, was the Capital Improvements Program, because in order to attract the non-minority students, the court and the plaintiffs in the case wanted something that we called, back in those days, suburban comparable schools. So there was a massive capital improvements program to the tune of, ended up being several $1 billion, along with the educational remedies.
As we went through the process of integrating schools, and especially the impact of the lawsuit, the Kansas City desegregation lawsuit, that what happened was a lot of money was funneled into our public school system, and so it was great for a time in regards to facility improvement.
as I remember, the attitude of some of the other schools, kind of haves and the have-nots. We had I don't say overabundance, but we had finances at our disposal that I'm not sure that they did. And I'm sure if I were a principal in a traditional school, I'd have some of the same feelings. And if I remember correctly, toward the end of my tenure at the school, the district began to put extra money, and I can't remember what they had a name for it, but they were given extra money to help compensate for their not having what we had.
Some schools were left as neighborhood traditional schools, but they weren't given the same amount of funding as the magnet schools. And so there was a point where it appeared that a two-tiered system was being created, but that again was corrected later on.
A 40-60 ratio. And some of our children of color wanted to get into some of the schools. I mean, say like maybe a youngster wanted to leave Border Star, a black youngster wanted to leave Border Star and go to Longan. But they could not get in because I think that, I think we had two goals with the court order. We wanted to, number one, we wanted to create schools that would cause non-minorities to come back to the Kansas City School District. And then as a second objective, we wanted to improve the achievement level of minority youngsters.
As we were looking at our curriculum, we were constantly on the lookout for field trips that would add a dimension to what was being taught. And that was really interesting. We began to develop field trips that would go along with this unit in social studies, this unit in math, and that in of itself was wonderful because kids of poverty doesn't make any difference what your race is. It's a socioeconomic fact here. If they don't have the money for these experiences, and because of the money that was available with DSEG, we had unlimited field trips, and it was free to the kids.
When the magnet schools, most of them were in place and were very active. There were, trips abroad. There were students that went to the Galapagos Islands and to Spain and to Paris. They were exposed to all kinds of, new equipment, laboratories, art facilities, things that certainly the district could not have afforded the way things were going. So I think that would have had a huge impact.
A lot of money was infused into the Kansas City Public Schools. I don't know if that money was managed well. It went to a lot of facility improvements, special programming like magnet schools and themed-based schools and things of that nature. But over time, that did nothing to improve the academic outcomes of students.
We want our boys and girls to be successful on the Iowa test of basic skills. So a lot of times, when we think in terms of student outcomes, I'm not so sure that, the skills and the knowledge and, the abilities of our children was really, the things that they were being taught was really in line with what the test.
Well, I think academic outcomes may have been good when we had teachers who really were concerned about our education. But once you go to a school where you're having to deal with a lot of other issues other than just learning a subject, it becomes more difficult to retain the information. That's one of the things that I was happy when my parents took me out of the public school system and put me into a private school, because I didn't have to concentrate on those things as much in order to excel.
Still not getting to the root in regards to the systematic and institutionalized opinions of people. And so did I still live in a predominantly Black neighborhood? Yes. Did I still, have predominantly all Black teachers? Yes. Nothing in our everyday lives, I don't think anything changed.
When you had the integration, the white teachers tended to either retire or go to suburbia or go other places where they felt more comfortable. Black teachers were more in flux, but you had doctors who were teachers. There weren't just teachers who had like degrees in teaching, but they also were doctors. Principals of schools were African American or Black doctors of education, and these were very prestigious places to be and positions to have.
When it was integrated in '54, it gave all of us an opportunity to attend school together and learn each other's cultural differences. And then there was a period of time when segregation kind of came back again because there was what you call the white flight. When schools were integrated, then the whites that chose not to attend school with the blacks moved out. Those that could afford to moved away from the inner city to the suburbs.
And when they moved out, then what did they take with it? Their tax base. So then where we had separate and unequal schools before, we still had separate and unequal schools because the resources just was not there. Did we have a diverse student population? That was, a thought to be, or that it was going to be an outcome. It didn't happen. Whether I was at Blenheim Elementary School or Lincoln Junior High School or Southeast High School, I could count on my hands the number of white students or students from other races or cultural or ethnic backgrounds. So there again, it didn't achieve the goal.
Basically, you still have the majority of African Americans or blacks still in the same areas that they were in at the time that the desegregation happened, and white people had moved out into suburban areas or further west or south. And these are the things that have not really changed that much until you have like gerrymandering or you have some type of disenfranchisement because of economic development and so forth. These things happened because now we're trying to get people back into the city, and some people want to come back into the city. But I think that that integration had a good intention, but all of the results were not as favorable.
I think that integration can work. I think that we need to look at the things that happen in the Kansas City School District and use it as as a guide. And because there were some pluses, we can't say it was all wrong.
The attempts to integrate the schools in Kansas City were courageous and innovative. The courage of Judge Clark to implement some of the orders that he did that were highly criticized, both in the legal field and by regular citizens. The work of Dr. Eugene Eubanks and Dan Levine and Ralph Parrish and those folks who came up with the magnet plans, and even those of us who were opponents, Arthur Benson, everyone was really working to make the school system better and give Kansas City something unique.
I think that we're seeing some more innovative and transformative thought happen around education because we are realizing that we've been failing. We've been failing for quite some time. So I'm excited about that. So I do think that slowly but surely we're kind of on an upward swing in regards to public school education in Kansas City.
We need to have, number one, more parental support so that the teachers can do their job to teach and the students have the opportunity to learn. And we need to make sure that there is some kind of way that we can continue in offering children the opportunity to excel. We need to get teachers, make sure that the teachers really have the students' interests at heart, and that we just do our best to make everything a success.
I think that students need to have a lot more pride. I think we're missing the pride that we had when I was in school. I think when people are really excited about themselves and about their accomplishments, then they do better if they are focused on what their future may hold.
We know from research, and we tout this over and over, if a student isn't on grade level in reading by the time they're in 3rd grade, it's difficult to catch up. Well, if that's the case, I believe K through 3 emphasis should be on reading, writing, and thinking, and basic math skills. Because I don't care how many kids take the SAT or the ACT or how many go to college, we have an awful lot of students that are not successful, in my way of thinking, because they cannot read. And I would think if we spent K through 3 teaching our kids to learn to read, then let's then shift in 4th grade and read to learn.
We have to realize that the system of education that exists today was created 100 plus years ago. It was created based on an agricultural and then a manufacturing-based system. We're not there today. So we have to be transformative and innovative in our thinking and realize that a system that was structured there hasn't moved as society has moved, hasn't evolved as society has moved. So we have to really take a look at district or system improvements as well as school improvements and take a really comprehensive approach to education to improve academic outcome for students.
I think as a society, we have to address some of the challenges that students face and come to school with. I think that we have to put more resources into the schools and into just our communities and the lives that the students live. It's very difficult to concentrate on your schoolwork if you're fearful for your life or you're hungry.
We have to realize that it takes, we have to really bring in the village. You know, we have to bring in all sorts of resources, you know, to really understand. And then we must make sure that the education that we're providing, it will be an education that we can truly say they have academically been successful. In other words, they've been able to finish college, get jobs, marry, you know, and raise their children and things like that.
Every student has the right to learn and every teacher has the right to teach. And if I think we all work together in doing that, you know, the parents have to support the teachers, the district has to support the teachers in their effort to teach, and we have to demand that the children get the benefit of everything that they can possibly get while they're there in school. Really do, and know that we have their best interests at heart.
Making sure that we're protecting all children. So regardless if you get free or reduced lunch or you're black or you're white or you're brown or whatever it may be, if we're really about educating children, then we should be about educating all children.